All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Healing Chronicles Spring 2022. So happy to see you all here. We have a jam packed agenda. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Today we are celebrating our national treasures and raising money for the documentary so we can go to post production. All right. Here we go. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate and love all of you. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All righty. Let go. Okay. I have a Savior. I'm ready to go to that land where I'm bound. I have a Savior. I have a Savior. I have a Savior. All righty. So today we're having a conversation in black and white. And, you know, I know such genteel people, but in the event that there are some opinions shared that you don't agree with, feel free to speak up. But we don't yell, we don't shout. Um, we don't really come to irreconcilable differences. But, just tell your truth and we will all grow, learn, respect one another, and we can agree to disagree. Rhonda
Oh,
Mendoza.
oh
Hey.
wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's uh-huh. Rhonda is she's actually like my spine. I don't know if you can see it back here, but Rhonda, did you want to say hello to everyone? And thank you for being you and for having my back. Appreciate you.
Oh, hello, Monta, and welcome everyone to this wonderful engagement. I have uh, been with Monta for quite some time, and I've just had such a lovely experience here at Healing Chronicles. If for anyone that is new this evening, this is regular Zoom, so we do have a chat button right below beside the participants. If you feel reactive and you want to do like double snaps or a big heart, you can definitely post your reactions. There is a raise hand button so we can see who's moving along the way in our conversation. And from time to time, we'll be using the chat. So feel free if you do have questions, you can go ahead and I can help and
Go on,
bring
go
us.
on. No, no problem. I gotta go that way. Thank you.
So, with that being said, we welcome our wonderful treasures here today, and we also are thankful for She Can, who's here, Miss Peggy Sullivan. Back to you, Manda.
Thank you. So with the Healing Chronicles, we explore several different topics and we do it Sankofa style, just primarily to go back to the past and learn the lessons so that we can succeed in the future. We've been very fortunate to have a sponsor for the last 6 series, the She Can organization with Peggy Sullivan and Amanda Alford. Peggy's just written a beautiful book. She headlined our December Healing Chronicles, Happiness is Your Responsibility. So in a time where I guess in the past year and a half, 2 years, the world has just been in flux. And so this book and the wonderful anecdotes that Peggy tells will definitely lift your spirits. So Peggy and Amanda, I can stop sharing if you all have something that you want to share with us.
Yeah. Oh, you go ahead, Peg.
I'm just going to say it's always a pleasure to be here. It's such a great experience. And it's always a pleasure to learn along the way. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I was just going to say, hey guys, I'm Amanda. I'm with the She Can organization. I'm our event coordinator. But for those who don't know about She Can, we're so grateful to be here. We're a nonprofit. We're a community of supportive, caring women all on our own journey to become the best versions of ourselves. We focus on the total woman. So we give women the tools they need to step into their power, to shine bright. We focus on personal development, professional development, overall wellness, and diversity and inclusion. So we're so happy to be a part of the Healing Chronicles with Manda. I would really love for you all to experience She Can. I know we have to dive into today. We have so much to go through and talk with and hear stories. So I'm going to pop in the chat the She Can organization. You can learn more about us on our website. You can follow us on social media. And I'm also going to pop in a guest code so you can attend one of our She Can virtual events at no cost. So check us out. We're so grateful to be here and to be a part of this amazing series. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. What's coming up next? So if anyone wants to take care of that free admission,
we have a lot of,
let the people know.
we have a lot of things coming up. Our next virtual event is actually a Real Woman, Real Stories event where we'll be hearing from Sheila Condra. She's gone through cancer, bullying, a divorce, and, recently during the pandemic. So she'll be speaking on her story and how, she got past it and how she chose joy throughout that whole situation. But we have a lot of events coming up. Peggy, she actually has her Happiness, Her Responsibility presentation will be at the beginning of April. Along with, we'll be talking about chakras. Also, that's another virtual event we have coming up. But yeah, I can definitely pop more information in the chat so people can just click on that link and read what we have coming up.
Okay, and definitely put the website in, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go back to sharing. Okay. So before we get started today, I wanted to share a little bit with some of you why this documentary that I'm that kind of landed on me. You know how Malcolm said, "We ain't landed on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us." So with this documentary, it kind of landed on me, and I'm going to share the YouTube video, which gives a brief explanation, and then we'll go into our dedication. So let's play that, see how that works.
Hi there. My name is Monda Raquel Webb. I'm a writer, producer, and director. Oral storytelling is the heartbeat of African American culture. It's what keeps us alive. My project is entitled Portraits in Black, Honoring Our National Treasures, in which 4 African Americans are profiled, where they tell their stories of living through watershed moments in American history. Today we spoke with Mrs. Margaret Morrison, educator, activist, and genealogist, who participated on the last day of the historic march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. Truly a masterclass in civil rights. Mrs. Morrison was prepared to leave her husband and child at home while she went to march for a cause that she believed in and was ready to die for. I wanted to use nature as a set. We interviewed Mrs. Margaret outside on her patio, which is a very calm, serene environment She's got the water running in her koi pond. And as she reflected upon a time over 50 years ago that was glorious at the same time that it was frightening, I needed for her to be comfortable. And I also asked my cinematographer, Jeanette Biles, to focus on extreme close-ups as Miss Margaret was telling her story, whether it was the way the sun captured the glint of her earring, or you could really see the intensity in her eyes, the way she expressed herself with her hands, because I want the viewers to feel as if they're right on the porch with Miss Margaret, hearing her tell her story. I'm motivated to do this documentary because I believe in storytelling, and I believe that the future has a past. Oftentimes with African American history, we're left out of the history at all. So by giving people who lived through it an opportunity to tell their story, not only is history shared with us, but history lives.
Okay, so sometime last year, early in January, the Denton Black Film Festival asked a few of us filmmakers, hey, we're going to be partnering with Panavision. Panavision provides lenses and all kinds of technology for the film industry, major films. And they felt that they needed to do more for the African American community. So the founders of Denton Black Film Festival said, hey, do you want to participate? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, I really didn't know what they wanted, right? But I was like, I'm there. And so they said, okay, well, Monda, your month is going to be April. And I said, okay, fine. And for all of you who know me, you know that if it was April, it wasn't until the end of March when I looked at it, right? What the instructions were. And part of it was to talk about the project that you were working on, to film yourself on set. And I'm like, I need a project. Like, what is this? And I'd spoken with Mrs. Margaret. I'd met her a little bit before, I think the previous fall. I don't remember now. I'm having my senior moment. And then I met Joan Esser through a real estate transaction. And I'm like, you know what? Every time I spoke with them, I go, oh my God, their stories need to be captured. People have to know these stories. And so I decided right then and there at the end of March, called Miss Margaret first to see if I could talk to her about her experiences. And I'm like, this is it. We're going for it. So it was just going to be 4 people, something very short, maybe like a 30-minute documentary. And it just morphed into something that, when people say I'm dealing with something that's bigger than me, this is really something that is bigger than me. And hopefully, I believe that it can become a series. So we're going to finish the documentary and then try to sell it to streamers or networks or even educational systems around the country, provided they don't try to ban us, to invest in the series, because there are so many stories out here that we can all benefit and learn from. And I said I want to preserve Black history through oral storytelling. Can I just tell you all, out of all of our national treasures that I spoke with, we had great conversations, but there were 3 basic questions that I asked them so that there can be some kind of continuity throughout the documentary. And one of them is, at the time, did you realize that you were making history? 8 out of 8 of our national treasures said they weren't thinking about history. They were in the moment. They were present. But what was most important to them is that what they were doing was for the generation to come after them. And when I look at the word preserve and I see pre and I see serve, it makes sense that I am here to follow the instructions of the ancestors and to follow my calling and look at those who came before me and help preserve their stories, because their stories are our stories. So that is that's the history behind how this project started, and it has momentum, and the train has left the station. There's nothing I can do but see it through with the help of all of you, and that's it. So today we're formally kicking off the fundraising for post-production, and I'm just glad that you're here. So I generally do a dedication in the Healing Chronicles. And today's dedication goes to Zora Neale Hurston. She's absolutely one of my favorite people. And I love her literature. I love the soul that comes through whatever she does. And as a storyteller and anthropologist, she focused on Southern folklore, and through the New Deal with President Roosevelt from 1935, the Works Progress Administration. One of the things they did was a federal, or got behind or funded, was a federal writers project, and which was responsible for sending people to different parts of the United States to collect oral histories. And there was I wanted to start this. Let me see, I'm gonna stop share. And that's actually me at her grave in Fort Pierce. I don't know if any of my family members on my mother's side are here, but my great uncle, Uncle Junior, Levi Robinson, actually managed some properties in Fort Pierce, Florida, and Zora Neale, during her later years, was one of those residents. And unfortunately, she died not having much money at all. And and her grave was unmarked, I think, until the 70s. Dr. Badajoe, you may want to correct me, when Alice Walker found it. So now it may be a national a site. I'm not sure if it's national or not, but yeah, this was during that time. So what I wanted to do, because I wasn't able to get the audio inside of the PowerPoint without impacting everything, was just share with you a minute and a half of how Zora would collect these stories and and reenact them. So she did it through performance. And this one I found in the Library of Congress, and it's called That Old Black Gal, and it's about some miners who would go down in the mines and make these songs while they worked. And this one, That Old Black Girl, is about a guy who he'll do anything for his woman, and work so hard just to make sure she's taken care of. So take a listen. Okay, well, here we go. Okay.
I got That Old Black Gal is a spiking song that I got down there in Miami, and was sung by Max Ford, the singing line on this construction crew. Used for spiking down the rails. That old black gal keep on grumbling. New pair of shoes, Lord, a new pair of shoes. I'm going to buy her shoes and stockings, slippers too, Lord, slippers too. I'm going to give her all my money. Kisses too, Lord, kisses too.
Back in 2 hours.
Wow. Right? Wow. Take a moment, let this sink in. And before, I never heard her voice, until I pulled this up. So, yeah. All right. So let's
Yeah,
go.
you're right. You're right about the when she discovered, in fact, her book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, was the direct result of her search for Zora Neale. And the garden of literature and anthropology and song and wit that was part of Zora Neale's legacy. Yeah.
Thank you, Mama Badajoe.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, you guys, now you seeing my screen again? Okay, good. So, all right, and I really love this quote by Alice Walker. We are a people. A people do not throw their geniuses away. If they do, it is our duty as witnesses for the future to collect them again for the sake of our children, if necessary, bone by bone. So with that,
That's me.
uh-oh, my bad. Okay, I want to bring up our first treasure. I am going to let them introduce themselves and share a little bit what their story is and what they lived through. And I will entreat you, and I think there's some attorneys on the phone as well. I will entreat you to, engage in a lively conversation with Mrs. Gosley, because, I'm curious to see how much has changed from, she'll tell you the time period, to now. So, Ms. Gosley, I'm going to bring you up, and you can also tell our audience who this pretty little young lady is on the right side of my screen. I'm going to stop sharing and put you on spotlight. That okay?
Thank you, Manda.
Okay. There she is.
So my name is Georgia Gosley, and I'm a native of the state of Maryland. I was born and raised on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which I always distinguish when I introduce myself because of an experience I had when I was in college related to people born and raised on the Eastern Shore. So I have to say, first of all, I'm just thrilled to be a national treasure, to be recognized in that capacity. In 1970, I was the only African-American law student at the University of Maryland School of Law on Green Street in Baltimore City. When at that time, Manda asked, well, did I realize I was making history? At that time, I was a married woman with 2 small children and just getting accepted into law school after being told that because I had gone to a Black school, even though I had a 3.9 overall average, University of Maryland, which was at that time a very racist institution. So they decided, well, we're not quite sure if we're going to accept you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you to Howard University to a program called Council of Legal Educational Opportunity. And if you're successful, then we'll probably take you. Keep in mind now, this was 1970, so we're just coming out of the 60s, and it was hot in this country about civil rights and racism. I was living through all of that. Thurgood Marshall and Roe v. Wade. I was right there when all of that was happening. So after going to Howard University for the summer and really having a wonderful time, I did learn quite a bit about the law, though. So finally, University of Maryland decided they would accept me in the summer of 1970, and I began to matriculate with 7 other African-American men, and we matriculated for 3 years. And it was a real struggle. It was a struggle primarily not because we lacked the intelligence to learn the law, even though most of us had never been exposed to lawyers. I know the first African-American lawyer I ever saw in my life was the Honorable William Murphy, commonly known as Billy Murphy, who is a genius attorney who now currently resides in Baltimore City. And so for me, matriculating at University of Maryland was a difficult task, being the only Black female. That wasn't the issue for me, being the only Black female. It's just as I reflect back on it, I realized, but when you have a husband and 2 minor children and you're working in law school, you're studying 10 hours a night, you're reading, you're taking care of your kids. I remember putting my kids to bed at 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night and going to sleep myself. And I was up from midnight until 7 o'clock every night for 3 years studying and reading case law. So I would walk around the campus looking kind of a little baby crazy, I would say, because I was just sleepy. But, you know, when you're 23, 24, you know, you can do that. And fortunately for me, there were a few white students at the law school who were friendly and who would actually speak, but the majority of them were very indifferent, very cold, unwelcoming. And the dean was just pure racist. There's no other way to describe him. And I did have a verbal confrontation with one of the law professors, and I then went to my locker and I called my father and I said, Dad, I'm sure they're going to put me out of law school. I mean, I had just started, but it was so intolerable to listen to the white male professors refer to us, talk to us like we were just nobody. And the guys, they weren't going to stand up. And it's rough in America on African Americans, and it's specifically more difficult for African American men. So I'm the only Black female. So I strolled into his office and used words that I don't typically use because I couldn't stand it. My heart could not take the blatant racism that we were experiencing. I remember the grading system. You had to have a 67, never forget it, in my lifetime, in order to pass. So what the professors would do, they would give all of the Black students a 67, a 66, a 65, a 64, so that we were always teetering on the edge of being put out of school. And almost every semester, some Black student was put out. They had to beg and crawl to get back in, not because of merit, but because of racism. And the truth is, even now, University of Maryland has progressed, and I don't think that's such an issue now. But I can tell you this, that was 1973 when I graduated, 47, almost 50 years. When I hear or get an invitation from the University of Maryland, even today, to go back for whatever, my heart skips a beat because I feel the racism today. So it stays with you. You understand it, intellectualize, you theorize, you get away from it, but the hurt and the pain of being disrespected just because you happen to have brown skin, I thought it was terrible. And then when we graduated, I remember lots of things about graduation day, one of which was we had to wear plain nylon stockings. We had to wear, I couldn't even believe that they would delineate what we had to wear, but I never forgot that. We had to wear couldn't wear what we wanted to wear. We were designated to wear certain things. And then the word was, well, African-American students don't pass the bar. You won't pass the bar examination. So we decided, my buddy, retired Judge Cliff Gordy and I, we decided we're going to pass the bar the first time. And so we studied 10 hours a day, every day, and went to the bar review classes, which we were allowed to attend because just a few years prior to us going to the bar reviews, Black students, and I think George Russell, who's a retired judge from Baltimore City, would attest to, Black students were not allowed to go to the bar review courses, which really prepares you to take the bar exam. So we were fortunate. We didn't really know it at the time. We took the bar review class and God blessed us to pass the bar the very first time. It was extraordinarily difficult. And had I not passed the first time, I would have never taken it again, probably just because of my family and the kids, et cetera. But, you know, I was blessed because I was very serious about the law. When I was first introduced to it, I just fell in love with the law. And even today, I am fascinated. We have a saying as lawyers that the law is a jealous mistress, and it is, because no matter what, through my life, whenever I've had a problem, whenever I was happy or sad, I could always turn to the law, because if you want to lose yourself in intellectualism, then you can read case law and you can go off on tangents. I like detail, and the law is extraordinarily detailed. I never forget what Billy Murphy said to me. He was one of my mentors, and he said, Georgia, always read the footnotes. That's where the real information is. Read everything. And it was a voluminous task to read everything, but I was blessed and I was able to go on to try cases, and I became a federal prosecutor. early in my career and realized that I am not a prosecutor. I am not trying to put any people away from society. I found as I was growing as a lawyer and a young woman that I was really a defense attorney in my heart. And so after a brief stint in the federal prosecutor's office, I did then go to become criminal defense attorney. And then I happened to be filing some documents in court one day, and the TV cameras picked me up, and it was on the news, and I had an opportunity. I was invited to audition for a television show. So I ended up doing 2 television shows for most of my career. A show called Square Off. I think there's a new version of it now in Baltimore City, and a show called Sunday Live. I did those TV shows, which was, for me, it was a great experience because I could express myself as an African American in the media and say some of the things that a lot of people would want to say, but wouldn't say or couldn't say because we felt at that time so marginalized in our society. And so that was a great experience for me. That was a great experience. And I mean, all kinds of things for my career. I decided after being on television and trying cases, the community asked me if I would run for judge in Baltimore City. At that time, it was the Supreme Court of Baltimore City, which is currently now the Circuit Court for Baltimore City. And my heart did not really say run for judge. It was not something that I personally wanted to do, but the community drafted me because I had enjoyed a great deal of popularity in Baltimore City. So I ran. And it was the most eye-opening experience I think I've ever had. I ran citywide. I ended up with 81,000 votes, and I won the Democratic primary. And it was something I had never experienced before. It was a great joy. I went on to run for the general and lost that election. And privately, I was kind of happy because I never really wanted to be a judge, but I was very, very disappointed that for the people who supported me. I had tremendous support. And at that time, there were no African-American female judges. I think we had one that had just gotten on the district court, Honorable Mabel Hubbard. I think she was at the district court, but there were no circuit court African-American female judges. And now in Maryland, we have 32. I think it's 32, maybe even 35 African-American female judges. But back in the day when I ran in 1982, there were none. And so I feel like I was a trailblazer in the sense that I opened the door because I was told by some of the male lawyers to get behind the men. And I said, why? Why wouldn't you get behind me? And so I never forget the name, and I won't call it the name of the lawyer who said that to me. And even when I see him today, that's the first thing I think of. I try to forget it and leave it, but I just remember it whenever I see him. I've never shared it with him, but so that was an exciting experience. And after my mother passed in 1993, I resigned television, closed my practice, and moved to Florida. I wanted to see more of life than Baltimore, which was a great experience for me coming from the Eastern Shore. So I moved to Florida and decided to go back to school. And I went back to school to become a certified personal trainer at Fitness Institute International, and went on to do the legal aspects of personal training and became keynote to national organizations in health and fitness. And then I decided I wanted to move to Europe. So I moved from Miami to Geneva, Switzerland. Now you talk about a difference.
Then you know, we don't have that much time. I love your bio.
Okay, let me
have a few questions because we got like 7 more to go.
Sure, let's go. Just let me, yeah, because I get caught up in it. Tell me what you want me to focus on, because I'm in my head going through it. But the experience of being an African American as a trailblazer was a unique experience. So and it goes on from there. But yeah, talk to me about the experience as an early student at Howard University Law
Wow.
School and at Maryland. Something you never forget, that's for sure.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor for a couple of minutes. Does anyone have any questions for National Treasure, Miss Georgia Gosley?
Too many questions, too many. Oh my God.
Bring it, Anna. Come on.
Well, I actually have too many questions because you were there in the midst of so much happening. And this was where not only for you, but I did a film on called Power to Heal about desegregation of hospitals. And I would, at another time, I would love to come back and ask about what was your involvement, connection with folks who were dealing with things there, at the same time of people, the communications going on with you and others. I can't, I have too many questions. Another time, I'll come back.
We may need a part 2, right?
Yeah, really. You were there and at a really wonderful and amazing time. And I just congratulations and really mazel tov. It's amazing what you've done. Extraordinary. And anyway, I'll ring off because I have too many questions.
Okay.
I have one, if I may.
Is that you?
That's me. That's
Okay.
me. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for coming in late, but Ms. Gosley, how do you go about protecting yourself when in an embattled situation while protecting your loved ones? And by that, I mean, everybody knows you're in harm's way, and trying to keep you safe, they want to deter you from putting yourself in harm's way. So it's well-meaning, but you still are committed to your vision. How do you protect yourself in staying true to your vision while still protecting your family and reassuring them that it's the right vision?
Well, at the time I was going through law school, remember I was one of those students who was a high school dropout. So I had to take the GED to even get into college and go to law school. So I was so focused on matriculating and learning the substance of the law, I was not even thinking about protecting myself, protecting my family. I was just living day to day because at that time I didn't have the consciousness of what was going on around me. I mean, it was a day-to-day experience. You grow up, you take one day at a time, you move through and you matriculate. I was so singularly focused on what I was doing because I was shielded. I was trying to say to Manda and to a lot of young kids nowadays, they say, oh, Miss Gosley, you were back in the day, it must have been rough. I said, well, it was for those who had that experience. I didn't have that experience. I was blessed to be sheltered. I was blessed to have a great family. So there was never a question of how do I protect myself or protect my children? Because I didn't have that negative experience of the cultural thing, the racism, yes, at Maryland Law School, but my childhood and my marriage and my all of that was very nice. I had a great childhood, great family, great husband, kids. And so that wasn't a struggle. The struggle was dealing with the racism at the law school. But in terms of, did I ever think about protecting myself or protecting my kids? That never became an issue because I had never seen in my lifetime that type, any violence, any disturbance. And I tell the kids today, what you're seeing on television, Black people being shot and knees on, we didn't experience that. It was going on, but I didn't experience that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Nope,
Yeah,
thank you.
You know, you're not thinking about that, you know, unless it was your reality and it wasn't mine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bree, I'm going to bring you up and then we're going to go to the next treasure. Bree, what's going on with your audio? You got 5 seconds. I gotta move it. Wait, just write your question down or put it in the chat, and you know. Okay, and if Ms. Gosley isn't here, then we will. Then I'll make sure I'll get the question to her. Thank you, Mrs. Gosley.
You're so welcome.
Beautiful. All right. So up next, Um, this gentleman, when he met me, just treated me like blood from day one, and has been extremely supportive. Uncle Lionel, I call him Uncle Lionel Woodyard, and I'm going to share quickly a trailer for a documentary that he was a part of last year that was up for an Oscar, and the octopus beat it. Y'all remember my teacher, the friend, the octopus, So let me share this trailer from Crip Camp, and then Mr. Lionel, you can speak about whatever you want because I know that we talk primarily about forced integration. So can you all see the screen, first of all? Everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
What, you want me to tell them what happened? Well, two people got cramps and they're spreading. We were all very hyper about it. I have to go shower some people.
Executive producers President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama.
I wanted to be part of the world, but I didn't see anyone like me in it. I hear about a summer camp for the handicapped run by hippies. Somebody said you probably will smoke dope with the counselors, and I'm like, sign me up.
Disabled campers play guitar and sing.
Come to Camp Jeanette and find yourself. There I was in Woodstock.
Campers dance and play baseball.
You wouldn't be picked to be on the team back home, but at Jeanette, you had to go up to bat.
Even when we were that young, we helped empower each other. It was allowing us to recognize that the status quo is not what it needed to be.
Sundance Film Fest winner.
The world always wants us dead. We live with that reality.
At the time, so many kids just like me were being sent to institutions. It was just a continual struggle.
Most disabled people, like myself, are unable to use public transportation.
We needed a civil rights law of our own.
A Netflix original documentary.
A rehabilitation program has been vetoed by the president because it was cost prohibitive.
We decided we were going to have a demonstration.
You get the call to action, to the barricade.
Disabled
A
protesters.
small army of the handicapped have occupied this building for the past 11 days.
So many people from Camp Jeanette found their way into the building.
The deaf use sign language.
The FBI cut off the phones. The deaf people went, we know what to do. That's how we communicated to the people outside the building. The Black Panther Party would bring a hot meal. We were like this.
We are the strongest political force in this country.
Addressing congressmen.
We will no longer allow the government to oppress disabled individuals. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Sit-in participants parade triumphantly.
What we saw at that camp was that our lives could be better.
A child rides his father's wheelchair. Protesters crawl up Capitol steps.
If you don't demand what you believe in for yourself, you're not going to get it.
Crip Camp, a disability revolution.
Would you like to see the handicapped people depicted as people? Excuse me?
In select theaters and on Netflix March 25th. Rated R.
Oh, shoot. Okay, just a slip of the fingers and look what happens. All right. Cool. That movie is so good. If you haven't seen it, please. Is it still on Netflix, Mr. Lionel?
Yes, it is.
Okay, look at that. Look at that pulling on. Look at that face. Okay, so Uncle Lionel, I'm going to bring you up. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and put you on Spotlight. Okay. What's that? Hold on.
Sounds like the chime from a grandfather clock.
Oh, you know what? That might be Miss Margaret. That's somebody's clock. Okay.
Miss Margaret, she's on
Oh,
mute.
sorry. It's my clock. My clock.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay. Wait, where's Uncle Lionel? There he is. Okay, bring you up. Welcome, Mr. Treasure. There we go. Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, talk to us.
I'm happy to be here. And yes, Crip Camp is still available on Netflix. It has been translated, I think, into 26 languages.
Wow.
Because what happened at the camp and the result of the Americans with Disability Act changed the world for people with disabilities. What I connected with just a second ago was Jim said that, Jim Lebrecht, the voice that said, I wanted to be a part of the world, but I didn't see anyone like me in it. That was a time when Black people in this country wanted to be a part of the world, but they didn't see anybody like us in it. Jackie Robinson, we didn't see anyone playing baseball like him until he did it, okay? And I think that the movie talks about people who have been taken out of society by society and by their families. Usually when a person was born with a disability, the family would hide them away or put them in an institution. Similar to that with Black people, we were not a part of the whole world. Let me say this to our attorney, Georgia Goslett. My heritage is that comes from Maryland Eastern Shore.
Oh, really?
People that are connected to my bondage, this country, and landed in Maryland Eastern Shore. The Woodyards, my family name, that I got from those people that had my family in bondage in Alabama. And my connection is that of Maryland Eastern Shore. I am a genealogist and I search ancestry. And when I found that out, I've been to Maryland on the west side, Washington, D.C., College Park, Maryland, and all of that. But I think that about 7 months ago, I went to Salisbury, Maryland.
Where I was born.
I was close to where my heritage was from. I felt the earth move under my feet, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But growing up, I grew up around the same time that you did. In a society that in a way you didn't know that you were separated from people because you weren't around them. Did that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, because I went to a segregated high school.
All segregated high schools. The year of segregated high schools in Alabama was in 1968. My high school was the last high school before integration. And what happened in that setting is that they took all of our best teachers, moved into the larger, more well-equipped high schools. Now, let me say this. Our high schools were fine.
Yes, mine was excellent.
They're outstanding. We had standards and expectations and traditions and rituals that were inherent in our schools. And when integration happened and we started going to other schools, which was not a part of my life, all of that changed. My high school graduation was one of the finest in the country, but all Black, and there was nothing wrong with that. My family is coming in behind me, and that's good. But where should I start? I usually like to talk through questions, but I'll tell you that my involvement with the camp that spawned the movie Crip Camp came as a result of being on a historical Black college campus, Alabama State, and seeing a sign that said summer jobs, camps, New York, not having a summer job or an opportunity for a summer job. I applied and was hired immediately to be a counselor and to teach swimming. That's important because 2 summers prior to going to New York, I had earned the rank of Eagle Scout and had worked at the all Black camp, teaching swimming and teaching camping near badge. But when I got hired to work at the new integrated camp, I thought that I would teach swimming because I was a great swimmer. I had my water safety instructor, and those kids would have got their swimming mirror badges or camping mirror badges. But because of something about me, my job that summer at the camp was commissary, dishwasher.
Wow.
The staff was integrated, but the opportunities were not integrated.
Wow.
Relegated to subservient positions at the camp. That was at the Boy Scout camp. when Jeanette opened up, first off, we thought it was in the city of New York. If you're from Alabama, you think the word New York means a big city.
Right.
New York has an up the country that is as up the country as Alabama.
Yes, yes.
Upstate New York in a town called Hunter. But the camp was a utopia that I, for the first time, found my total humanity. For the first time, I was Lionel and not Black Lion. Although I'm Black and there's nothing to be ashamed of that. But if you understand what I'm saying, my humanity was born there. And I diligently worked as a counselor and taught swimming and became so involved with the camp. The movement of acceptance started when we took our kids to an ice cream parlor in the little village of Hunter. And this ice cream parlor didn't want our kids in because they were in wheelchairs. Well, I had experienced not being allowed in because of the color of my skin. So we organized a demonstration in wheelchairs in front of this ice cream parlor. It was hilarious. Should have been, it was cut out in the film, that part, but I do say in the film that we went to an ice cream parlor and they wouldn't let little Jewish kids in wheelchairs in because they were in wheelchairs. So we did a demonstration and eventually kind of shut the place.
Amazing.
But the camp, people at the camp found a freedom, as I did, that they had not experienced back in the city, as I did. And when they left the camp, a movement was started called Disabled in Action with Judy Heumann. And if you haven't read and you're interested in reading a phenomenal book that you will find and identify anything about yourself with the story of Judy Heumann, I highly recommend that you see Crip Camp and you also read the book Judy Heumann, Heumann, Being Human. Judy was born with polio in 1947 and never saw herself as being disabled. And you know, Black people, when we were born, we really never saw ourselves as having less than until we were shown that there were things that we couldn't do. You understand what I'm saying? If that makes sense to you. Judy didn't know that she was disabled until she tried to go to school. Okay. And they said that she couldn't because she was a fire hazard, and eventually came to our camp, started a movement, and that movement led to the Americans with Disability Act that I'm very proud to have been a part of. So part of my story. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lionel.
Wow. It's amazing.
I have something that I should have shared earlier. In 1961, my mother became the first colored sales clerk to work at a major department store in the entire South. My mother worked at J.C. Penney's in Pritchard, Alabama, as a stockroom clerk. Before modern stores, she worked where they unpacked goods, took them out to the floor of the store. At a certain time, they could come out and put things on the floor. But in 1961, she was hired to work as the first colored sales clerk in the history of the South. And when she was told that she was going to be doing that, the story goes that someone called the house and told her that Mr. Primo, who was the manager of the store, wanted to see her in his office. She thought she was going to be fired for something. And when the next day he told her he wanted her to come to work dressed like the other ladies, meaning the white ladies, and she would become a clerk at the store. It was quite interesting because for the first time, all the white sales clerks refused to work with her. They had two levels of the store, so they put her upstairs. And you know, rumors around Pritchard was that my mother was working at J.C. Penney's. So when Black people came up to see, they couldn't see her on the main floor. She was upstairs. So we got that, oh, she's not there. So she had no sales. So ministers in Pritchard organized shopping tours to J.C. Penney's to help her by giving rides from their churches. And there was a line going upstairs. My mother became the #1 salesperson in that store, bar none. And her name is Lily Monsieur Woodyard. And J.C. Penney recognized her history-breaking opportunity about 10 years ago in the company's newspaper, in the company's paper. But that's part of the story of my life growing up in Mobile, Alabama, having an opportunity to be a part of something that changed the world. Every time you see a sign that says handicap parking, or ramp going up a sidewalk on a street, or a stall in a bathroom, or opportunities for disabled individuals, which were a part of the original Civil Rights Act, I'm happy to say that I was a part of that and didn't even know it.
Wow. Thank you, Uncle Lionel. Thank
It's
you.
amazing. God. This is, God, we're all a part of this. It's just so amazing, amazing.
And we'll, as we, after all of the treasures go on, I mean, depending on the time, we can really talk about what it looked like from your side, right? So one of our treasures, Dr. Badajo, whom I affectionately call Mama Badajo, had a question. You have a question, Mama Badajo?
Yes, I did. When we were listening to the clip, one of the participants in the camp mentioned that the Black Panther Party bought meals. Could you talk a little bit about that?
The movement of Berkeley, California was very progressive in providing opportunities for individuals with disabilities. They started independent living housing in Berkeley. And in Berkeley, there were ramps already because Berkeley was very, very progressive. Well, Judy Heumann had found that there was a part of the civil rights legislation, 504, that said that no one could discriminate against an individual because of a disability, so forth and so on. I don't know the act by verbatim. So there was a demonstration at the Health and Human Services office in San Francisco by about 25, 22, 23 individuals in wheelchairs and all with disabilities. Califano was the Secretary of Health and Human Services under the Carter administration. And Carter had promised that he would push for equal opportunity with that 504. Well, we took over a building there. I wasn't there, but I say we collectively took over the building because Califano really wasn't interested in hearing what they had to say. It was the first time that a federal building was taken over, and no federal building has been taken over peacefully since. Long and short of it, they turned the water off, they turned the lights off, they took the phones off, and they didn't let anybody in. But the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California, one of the members that was disabled, Lomax, I can't think his name is Michael Lomax or Jerome Lomax, I can't remember his first name. He was a member of the Panther Party. He was born and he had contracted a muscular sclerosis. And he called Black Panther Party about food, and no one could stop him from coming. So when that came out in the movie, it was so heartwarming because, people have an idea of what the Black Panther Party was about. Right. But if you know the beginning of the Black Panther Party, it was to do breakfast for hungry kids in Oakland. So they provided meals for the opportunity. The building was sieged for 29 days, and a delegation from there went to Washington, D.C. during the time of the seizure and got it passed.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mama Badger. I thought you were going to share, so I guess when you go, you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank
now,
you.
before we move on, thank you, Uncle Lionel. Are there any of our treasures that have a time constraint? Um, because I just have you. I didn't put them in any particular. I didn't put you all in any particular order. So I just want to make sure that before we continue, if there's someone, one of you all that has to go or need to make time, just let me know, and I'll have you go next.
Yeah, man, I need to leave by 6.
Okay. You can tell when military people talking, y'all, because it's 5:11, and Randy's like, I gotta leave by 6.
If
1800,
you're on
yeah.
time, you're late.
Then Dr. Pons. So okay. All right. You know what? Let's just see who I had next. I think it's wait. We had a girl. Actually, I think it's a woman. But let's see. All right. All right. And well, I'm pulling that up again to all the people here. I appreciate you so much. As people from all parts of my life, my sorority sisters and my sister from Gamma Xi Phi, my good friends, family. What's up, cousin Rachel? Business associates, Deborah Norman, who edited Red Clay Dirt back in the day. Good to see you. This is awesome. And Jerry, what's going on? Um, and Jerry, we'll probably have you on the next episode. So if you hang on, I'll let you know what it's about. We'll have you as a guest. My folks from Women in Film and Video, Melissa Houghton, and I think Sid was on here from Chesapeake Film Festival. So it's just good to see all of you all. Connie and Spring, my other sisters through friendship. Hello, hello, hello. All right, let's see. Who did I have? Y'all know I lost the. Wait, okay, let's see. Is it here? No, that's not it, is it? Okay, hang on. I think what happened is. Okay, can you all see that? What can you see?
We see your download screen with documents.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to bring this up and then stop share. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Amanda. All right. So, Randy. Okay, so let's see. Who's next? Oh, okay. I don't think. Joan, are you on? Joan Esser? Okay. All righty. So, okay. There we go. Okay. So, next. All right. Randy. Okay, I'll do you a favor. I'll let you go. But Dr. Joe, Mama Bad Joe, hey, plug. Dr. Sybil, there he is. Okay, Randy. So can everyone see the screen with Randy Payton?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, now I gotta get this to.
Hello, happy Friday. I'm Jennifer Vong. Later in the show, Audi takes the stage. But coming up now, headlines. Look for another double-digit increase in U.S. auto sales this year. That's according to the National Automobile Dealers Association, which released its forecast today. The projected 12% gain will come on top of last year's 11% increase and push annual volume to 12.
All right, sorry guys. Hang on. That is not what I wanted to do. Okay. Okay. Where's Randy's turn, right? Okay. Here. And you come on at like 239%. Okay.
The 15th Annual Urban Wheel Awards come to Detroit on Sunday. Just ahead of the Detroit Auto Show, the event honors individuals making strides in promoting diversity in the industry. This year's winners of the Urban Vehicle Award in 3 different categories are the Chevy Cruze for Car of the Year, the Jeep Grand Cherokee for Top Truck, and the Volkswagen Jetta TDI for the Top Green Vehicle. So what were the key winning factors? Randy Payton, CEO of Decisive Media, which puts on the show, explains.
Basically, we're looking at the performance and the characteristics of a car in an urban and suburban environment. The majority of new car buyers live. So we're looking at, the turning ratios, ability to maneuver through tight traffic, torque, 0 to 40 instead of 0 to 60.
The ceremony will also honor Ford Global Purchasing Chief Tony Brown, winner of the Executive of the Year award. And that ends our show. Join Tom Warbeck later today. We'll see you.
All right. Okay, sorry about that little technological snafu. Randy, I've got actually 2 mentors on this call, Dr. Badajo and Randy. So, Randy, come on up and, you can talk about, take about 5 minutes or so to tell us, who you are. I mean, I know you're a Vietnam vet. We've got another vet on the call as well with Dr. Joe Pons, but just talk to us. We spoke during the interview, but as you can see, I mean, this audience is varied, super diverse. So just go for it. Let us know who you are and
Well, thanks first of all, Manda, and yeah, my history pretty much has to do with corporate diversity, business diversity. And it wasn't long ago that I actually started my first national automotive magazine targeting African Americans in the automotive industry. But I did realize at the time there were a few African Americans automotive journalists, but they wrote for Washington Post, Times, USA Today. There was no entrepreneurial media. And I just saw a need to fill that void, to provide, because as I worked in the Black newspapers, the editor, the Afro and all of that, I realized that automobiles was our second largest purchase. And they're one of the largest industries in the world that support communities and advertising, media, etc. And so we needed that support to communicate. And so I basically launched the first automotive magazine at 750,000 and inserted it in Black newspapers. And at the same time, inserted it in Washington Post, Detroit News and Free Press, New York Daily News, and some other mainstream publications. But what that did was open the door. In fact, even before the magazine was launched, it took me 5 years to actually tap into that big boy network and travel the world with CEOs of the major corporations and build those relationships. And at the same time, I was digging up a lot of history that was unknown, like the first Black automaker in 1906, the C.R. Patterson, the history of Blacks in motorsports and how we actually were the ones who put the engines on the horse carriages, because we built the horse carriages and raced them down the street. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff that I found a commonality between people of all races. And so I was able to relate that to the CEOs at a time when no luxury manufacturers and most auto companies were not doing any advertising and supporting any Black media, whether it be radio, print, you name it. I was able to make the case with European leaders, the presidents and CEOs of Mercedes and Jaguar and et cetera, because I basically showed them that, when you build a car in Germany, you have to market it to the same race of people in the UK, in France, et cetera. You're marketing it to different cultures, and that's all diversity is culture. We're targeting cultures. You take race out the picture. So, and then a lot of the top publishers of Car and Driver, Motor Trend, and all that stuff got behind me because I was able to dig up a lot of content that got their interest. Once they saw that common bond, that common love for automobiles, they all got behind me. So I did something that was unusual in the business world, literally, especially in the media world. The CEOs of these companies, corporations, actually funded my magazines. That's why I was able to launch at 750,000 four-color inserts in these newspapers. And so therefore, I became the first minority publication to actually begin to secure those ads. And at the same time, I became the first automotive media in the country to launch a website of any race in July 1995. From there, I launched the Urban Wheel Awards, which also became one of the most diverse events in the country. I'm talking diverse in terms of ethnic participation, Native Americans, Asians, Hispanics, organizations, chambers of Congress, you name it, Jews and Arabs, Republicans and Democrats, everybody came. We had US senators, Congress people, corporate CEOs. It was one of the most diverse awards, and it became, according to the mainstream media, the Oscars of the automotive industry. And it grew to over 2,500 people. But what it did, it wasn't just an event. What happened at the time, we needed diversity, but there was no content to drive it. Like, we needed content for the corporations to be able to become more diverse, to hire more minority employees, to hire more suppliers, dealers, all of that. So it took content. So the awards was the venue we used to generate that content. So I put together a panel of independent media from the major trade media, automotive news, Washington Post, Black media, Hispanic media, Asian media. They judged the finalists. Nobody from my team did. So we established that level of credibility. And then we had hundreds of media come to the event and take that content and generate and target it to all these audiences, Hispanic audiences, Asian audiences. And that was the driver, because they were driving content on dealers of the year, the suppliers of the year, what companies were the best in terms of corporate diversity. That and CEOs and presidents would come to these awards. So almost overnight, diversity took place. Companies went from 0 to like 10 and 15% minority multicultural employees in less than 2 years. There was a time when there were no African-American women who qualified for executive of the year because you had to be a vice president. And there were no African-American female vice presidents. So we created the Woman of the Year Awards. And we started recognizing women, and the CEOs and presidents they started competing. Toyota was first one, went back and hired an African-American, right after the awards, went and hired an African-American female executive. And the other one started elevating them. And after 3 years, we killed the category because there was enough African-American women to qualify for that category. So it's been a fun experience. I launched also Asians on Wheels, Latinos on Wheels, and not only experiencing it from African-American perspective, but as the publisher of we launched Latinos on Wheels at 500,000. I hired a Mexican publisher, Hispanic writers. Then I started experiencing the racism that was taking place in the Hispanic Latino market, which most people don't recognize because the US Census lumps all Latinos together in one category. And we perceive all of them as disadvantaged, disenfranchised minorities. Not true. Almost half of them are descendants of the slave owners and tend to be, they're so, in terms of classism, racism, we found it really tough to get advertising and support. Even when CEOs of the company said you must support them, they still refused to support the Latino, which was the only automotive magazine at 500,000 in the country for Latinos. And most of the ads were coming from the automotive manufacturers. And I started experiencing that. And that's a whole nother level that is not being recognized in this country because we lump them all together. But if you go to South America, you still see that level of classism and racism going on, which is one of the reasons there's no middle class there. And that's why we have immigration at the level we do, because the dark people are on the bottom and the descendants of the slave owners are literally on the top in South America. But that's something that I learned being on the front line and dealing with it one-on-one. Anyway, that's enough for me, Wanda.
Thank you, Randy, godfather of diversity in the automotive industry. Any questions for Randy before we go to our next treasure? Anna, is that you?
Yeah, where is he located? Where is he located?
Oh, I'm in Washington, D.C. area, University Park, right near College Park, Maryland.
Okay.
Mr. Payton, fantastic. This is an introduction for me, so I appreciate this opportunity. I'm wondering, as you look to produce writing, I'm a marketer at heart, and I wrote down some notes. Do you ever have events that focus on roads to drive on around the world? You know, a lot of times people who are really into driving, they want to, like the Autobahn, they want to have certain experiences like that.
Yes, we did a lot extensive travel pieces, not only around the world, but we had writers around the country who took cars on trips to Black, you know, they would visit Black African American sites of interest. One of the things that was really struck and a lot of the motor trends and car and driver and stuff, they didn't know that during the 1940s and 50s, when Blacks got cars, the NAACP and other organizations published maps of where we could go. If you're driving from the south to the north, you had to know where you could stop to go to restroom. That just blew them out the water that stuff existed. But today, we partnered with the African American Recreational Vehicle Association. They got chapters in every country, every state, including Alaska and Hawaii, RVers. And they have the same maps today. You can't just get an RV and stop at any campsite. It could be, you know, you have to know where to go as you're traveling around the country in RVs these days.
How do you mean?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
That's like the Green Book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Green Book that we published in the 40s and 50s. How to travel. And the recreational, they're redneck campsites that don't allow someone African Americans.
Today.
You want to know where to go. There's state parks and other places you camp out at, you know, but you need to map it out.
The only other thing I have is exclusive events with like the pro leagues, like NFL, MLB, hot cars, athletes, attractive women.
We did all of that.
Okay.
But my son continues the legacy on Automotive Rhythms. He launched an organization called Black Automotive Media, and he has about automotive media internships right now at 8 HBCUs.
Good.
And I started my nonprofit, which I trained over 300 young people in all these different categories, and they're continuing on the legacy. Mine is one of them.
Awesome.
Although she's not in automotive, but you know, she's been with me pretty much throughout my career. When I was at WHMM TV, Washington Afro, even On Wheels, the On Wheels magazine. But yeah, I love it that the young people are continuing on that legacy. You know.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Okay, who's that? Who's speaking?
It's Kim Freeman.
Oh,
your
hey,
new daughter.
Hi.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Question: how do you coordinate, if at all, with high school counselors who are working with minority children who are interested in pursuing a career in the automotive industry?
I don't know. I mean, high school, I've had high school interns, but keep in mind, high school interns need a lot more attention and commitment, you know. There's always a challenge. The biggest challenge, I think, in high schools right now is automotive techs. It's like an 80,000 a year shortage of automotive techs. tech careers. That's a big thing. Motor auto companies been scrambling to do to try to reach more high schools in terms of introducing them to the technology, because technology is growing and changing. You got the electric vehicles, and they can make so much money coming out of high school. That's the biggest challenge. As far as the media goes, public relations, marketing, you want them to have some entry-level experience, prerequisites in college to really, because there's limitations. When I try training a young intern, a lot of the interns can't actually get in, jump in the cars and test drive, because there's a limitation on insurance. And some of the luxury cars require that you be at least 25 years old, stuff like that. And so what we do is we try to train them as photographers, and I actually put together a curriculum for the University District of Columbia on entrepreneurial journalism that I was in the process of starting before the pandemic happened, which would allow me to work more with the high schools and college students, and partner with or businesses and nonprofits, because the students would work directly with the nonprofits and businesses to help them create their own, media, Instagrams and all that kind of, marketing. Because I find that this is a big problem right now, even in working with a lot of organizations, is that a lot of organizations that get the funding don't have the marketing ability to reach the constituents. The churches, a lot of the community organizations don't have Facebook sites or websites and things like that. So, that's something that young people are really good at. We can introduce them to more of that to support businesses and organizations, or businesses and organizations can, hire high school students to do that for them.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Thank you all. Okay, we're gonna keep it moving because we're at 5:30, but this is just intriguing. Thank you. Okay, so as long as I don't have any more technological snafus, we should be okay. All right.
I have to leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. It'll be on YouTube, and if there's anyone you want to contact, just let me know, okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very impressive. So impressive. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Now, Uncle Lionel, did you ask Miss Judy to come on? I feel like I saw her name, then I couldn't find her anymore. Okay, I can't see the screen, so I don't know if he's there. Okay.
Unmute, please. Ask again, Wanda.
Oh, you can't hear me?
I sent the invitation out to my Jeanette family, and I'm very happy Judy did join. And Judy, that everyone, Judy is Judith Judy Human, Heumann, who was a very big person that led the way for the passage of America with Disability Act. She has a phenomenal book that I mentioned earlier called Being Human. And that's it.
Okay. I thought I saw her join. I thought I saw her name pop up. So at any rate, okay. Hey, Ross, good to see you.
I have a question for Brother Pate. Were you a pilot?
Yeah, that's Dr. Joe Pons. He's coming up after Dr. Batterjoe.
I wanted to know, was he a pilot?
Who's that question for? Me, Randy?
Yes, Randy.
No. I was actually I was personnel administration for the Marine Security Guard Battalion. So we were the last ones to leave Vietnam. When you saw us leaving off the roof of the embassy. I don't know if you remember that yes. Famous. I was personnel administration.
I saw the helicopter. Was wondering.
Oh yeah, that's for Dr. Joe.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So next up is Dr. Deirdre Batterjoe. She's like another mother. And Mom, I know you're not feeling well, so we'll have you go next. And you can, I know there's some commentary and a lot of some of the other treasures that are on the line. If something triggers while someone else is talking, just feel free to jump into the conversation. You know, I don't want to be so structured and hemmed in that, although we're at time, you know, that you don't feel that you're participating. And anyone else who wants to just kind of add some add comments, observations, experiences, feel free to do so. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop share here, and Doc, you're up.
Okay. Well, greetings, everyone. This is a very interesting program that Monda has put together, not surprisingly. I'm really enjoying the comments and the feedback, and certainly the insights that people are bringing to this discussion. I think it's helpful for all of us to hear this information. I've known Monda since, let's say, a long time ago. She was one of my students many, many moons ago. And I remain in awe of her ability to put together programs like this, but also her dedication to writing and to storytelling, which is very important for us, especially now as we're sort of entering another phase of our life in this country, but also in the global community. So I want to give Monda that shout out. It's very important, I think, and much appreciated and needed. So when Monda asked me about this project and asked me to participate, she wanted me to focus on an event. And the event that came to mind was the assassination of Dr. King. And at the time in 1968, I had just moved to Los Angeles, and I was attending Los Angeles City College, a community college. And had left New York. I have connections to Maryland and Eastern Shore and all of that through generations past, and also to South Carolina. So it was all of that I brought with me to LACC, and I met some really interesting people there. There was a writers community there that was just getting started. LACC and many of the Los Angeles community colleges were just starting to hire African-American instructors and persons who had been very much engaged in various levels of the movement when I got there. And so it was a prime time to be in that environment. I had actually three excellent instructors. An African-American man who taught history and who had been very much involved in the movement in the 40s, had known several people who were engaged in the movement around Du Bois and others. And so he brought not only textbook knowledge, but he brought a sense of practical knowledge. It's very eye-opening. The second one was one of my English teachers who taught Shakespeare and took a liking to me because I happen to like poetry. I love poetry, and I like the sonnets of Shakespeare. And she sort of nourished my creative side. But the person that really nourished my creative side was an African-American woman who basically took me by the hand and not only nourished my poetry and my creative writing, but also taught me how to edit and taught me how to do layouts and designs for publication. And when I was in need of a job, she hired me as one of her assistants, and I helped her lay out, because there were no computers at that time. So you laid out everything on a table and had to put print together, and you had to measure everything and make sure the lines were right and so on and so forth, and people could follow the text. And Ms. Hogarth was her name, taught me how to do that. It was my first introduction to editing. And after a while, I ended up helping her to solicit work from my classmates. Well, some of my classmates were very active in the writers community in Los Angeles. They were also active in the Panther Party, which was producing its own newspaper at that time, and feeding children. So there was a lot of activity around that. And she also introduced me to people outside of the city college environment. Eventually, I worked for a time with the LA Sentinel. And eventually, when I moved on to USC, I worked for some other journals, The Black Politician, which Mervyn Dimely put together and edited. So this was my environment. This was basically what was structuring me at this particular time. And it wasn't just because Ms. Hogarth and some of the others took an interest in me that I became involved in writing and witnessing and so forth. It was also because I had left New York and moved to California, looking for opportunities that I didn't feel that I could achieve in New York. I know that sounds strange, but for me, it wasn't. I needed to get out of New York and get to a place where I could get to school and do the things that I had always wanted to do. California at that moment wasn't on fire, but it was hot. It was also very much undeveloped. I mean, the California I went to and the California now are like worlds apart. They're like in different spaces and places. You could drive on any of the highways for miles and miles, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 cars would pass. That's certainly not the case anymore. But we were, and when I say we, I mean the students of color, particularly African-American students who came from all over the country. So I had classmates from Texas, I had classmates from Alabama, I had classmates from back east. Most, of course, were from California themselves. But we formed a little group, I guess we would say. And that group was interested in documenting the experiences that we were having. And of course, this is 1968. This is after the 1965, when there's a sea change in education, and there's this huge push by Black people to get into these schools in the first place. And this is also following the events at San Francisco State that was pushing for not just Black people being in the university systems and the college systems, but also that along with the other levels of education that we were getting, that there was certainly some representation of Black history, Black literature, Black political science, and so forth. So there was this push, and we were all pushing. So we also had exposure to the Black Panther Party, which is why I asked Mr. Woodyard about that comment, because I know from experience that the Black Panther Party was not just walking around with guns and all of that. They were very active in protecting any number of vulnerable groups, not just Black folks, but they were very instrumental in feeding children, in educating children, in making sure that they got to school safely and came home safely. There was a whole list of activities that the Black Panther Party was engaged in that had an influence on all of us, either directly or indirectly. I have still, I believe, semi-decent collection of the newspaper that they printed, and I was interested in that because of the work I was doing at City College. When Dr. King, well, there was a split, of course, between Dr. King and Kwame Ture Stokely Carmichael, that was not unexpected by people who were who knew and who believed that what Dr. King was doing was right. We also didn't expect him to live long. And we also felt that the younger generation, that is, felt that that it was limited, that the peacefulness of the demonstrators was limited, unless you were willing to sacrifice large swaths of the community to get a lot of people killed. Already a lot of people were being imprisoned. And so there was a split based on survival. It wasn't based on, you know, the sort of, I listened to some of the commentaries in some documentaries and I find them very disheartening because it wasn't just a split between peaceful demonstrations and violence. It was a recognition that in this situation, you could be peaceful, but it didn't mean the other side was going to be peaceful. And so what do you do in the face of that reality? Because it was a reality. We talk about the police brutality and car stopping and all of that, but many of us experienced that, particularly in Los Angeles. New York, I don't even need to talk about because that was fairly obvious, but particularly in Los Angeles, you could be stopped on a dime. I experienced it. A lot of my friends experienced it. So there was also that recognition that is as important as Dr. King's message was, and the righteousness of the message, nobody denied that we also felt that at some point in time he would be assassinated. So when he was assassinated, successfully, because this was not the first attempt on his life, the last attempt was not the first attempt on his life, it was a shock, not because people didn't expect it. It was a shock because it became the reality that we most dreaded, if you understand what I mean. And it was painful. Nobody, even people who didn't believe in peaceful protests and nonviolence, nobody, absolutely no one within the African-American community, certainly, and in other communities as well, felt that that this was acceptable. being a student in the groups that I was associated with on campus and off, when King was assassinated, and of course we got the word in Los Angeles first because Robert Kennedy made the announcement. I don't know who organized it, but at the LA Stadium, the old LA Stadium where the Rams used to play eons ago, they put together a memorial for Dr. King. If you had seen the droves of people going into that stadium, it was absolutely unreal. I don't remember all the people who spoke. I really don't. All I remember was that feeling of being in that stadium. There wasn't an empty seat in that stadium. There was no fee to get into the stadium. Nobody checked the people going into the stadium or coming out of the stadium. But we all locked arms and went there to honor this man who was the symbol of nonviolence and who was violently murdered. That's part of what held us together. It wasn't the ideology, it wasn't the politics, it wasn't that. It was the fact that King had represented something that we hoped for, but not something that we expected. We expected exactly what happened, that eventually somebody would take him out. So when we're done, people are writing, people are engaged in discussions around what's next. Dr. King is gone. What do we do? What do we do? So it left a gap in among the people who were followers of King, but also took some of the air, if you will, out of some of the types of organizing that was going on in the communities around the question of peace. I think in some ways the rise of some of the violence within the communities that followed was a consequence, because there were series of traumas within the Black community. The trauma of Malcolm, the trauma of Medgar Evers, the trauma of King, the constant barrage of people in our community who were being removed from us. Let's put it that way. It's not just the assassination, but this was leadership, and leadership with ideas that was being removed from the communities. And that void then led to some of the other things that we're still dealing with today. Because at this point, there were many people who were looking at how to take this depressed energy, this suppressed energy, this manipulated energy, and directing it, like we were just talking about. Kim just mentioned the high schoolers who need direction, who need to find a place in this world. And there were people who were doing that. those of us who were fortunate enough to be in some level of university training or college training were also very active in the community. We were part of those educational programs. We were part of trying to help, in various ways, when the schools started falling apart. Somebody mentioned that before desegregation, that the segregated schools were fine. The only thing segregated schools didn't have sometimes were the most contemporary books, but what they did have were excellent teachers. And we know that for a fact. I worked in some of the predominantly Black schools in Los Angeles as a tutor. And coming out of Catholic school in New York, I was shocked when I picked up a book, was a history book, and they were still talking about the Ottoman Empire in the 1960s. These kids can't pass a test because nobody's talking about a test referring to the Ottoman Empire. It didn't exist anymore. So we saw our work as being work that had to address this void that was created by these assassinations and the removal of leadership in the 60s, early 70s, but also replacing that with our own energies and working in either education or industry or other types of places where we needed representation. And that was part of what we felt following the assassination of both King and Malcolm X, because we had lost those. I can say too that at the time, the Panther Party, which had coexisted with these other leadership persons, brought to us some of that relief, particularly with the young kids, because we know we had kids in the schools, just like we do now, whose parents didn't have enough money to feed them breakfast, or the parents had to go to work early, and so on and so forth. So the Panther Party did that kind of work.
I'm bad at
Yeah, I was going to close.
Okay, go ahead, close.
Yeah. I have to say this too. When the National Guard put down the riots at Kent State, there were, and this was around, there were Black studies programs all over the place. Kent State was one of the earliest ones. When they put down the anti-war protests there, it was these organizations, including the SDS, which is predominantly white group of young people, who wanted to bring some type of sanity and protest against the war in Vietnam, but also against discrimination and hostility into the mix at that time. And so many people, I was not at Kent at that time, but many people were saved by the actions of those kinds of organizations as well. To have lived through that and be where many of us are today, I think is an act of God in some ways. But also the fact that what we focused on was the next generation. There was a focus on the next generation and getting the next generation prepared to do the work and prepared to keep doing the work. And it didn't just mean the kind of activism that I'm talking about here, but it also meant being in the places like Mr. Woodyard discussed, and also the other gentleman talked about in the automotive industry. The idea is that we need to be everywhere, and we need to be represented everywhere, not just represented, but we need to be active everywhere. That's what we got out of that period and out of that era. And we were willing to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Badajoe. I appreciate the thorough narrative. And I know we're at time, and we probably have about, I would say, another half hour. And, you know, Mrs. Morgan, if we were here to midnight, I know you would be here. So I'm I don't know if anyone has any questions for Dr. Badajoe, but I'll bring Dr. Pons up next. But any questions? I mean, this is the kind of like the beginning of African American studies that a lot of us, my generation, takes for granted that didn't exist. So, you know, this is the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I'll definitely have questions towards the end.
Okay. Now.
To say something reference Dr. King during the 60s. He was looked upon as our hope. I think that his death, his murder, took away for a moment that hope that one day we too would find a way to be with white people on an equal basis. Because King, when King, even the bus boycott, I'm gonna tell you shortly, is this and that. In 1959, I just sent Manda a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King in my auntie's home in Mobile, Alabama, in 1959, February 1959. This is just 4 years after the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, everybody, that's the picture. That's my Aunt Alice in the white. King's wife is in the back with the long hair. The man with the glasses on in the middle, right by the mirror, that's Joseph Lowry.
Oh gosh.
Wow.
Joseph Lowry was a minister in Mobile. He invited Dr. King to Mobile for some initial meetings to organize Mobile. Everybody Black wasn't on the bandwagon.
Right.
Okay. Everybody didn't think that a lot of Black people thought the King was moving too fast. You know, and there were some Black leaders in Mobile who didn't want him there. So when they found out about him being there, it was rumored that the White Citizens Council was looking for him. That was a bounty on his head. I think you said that was not his death was not the first attempt. There were many attempts. And after Montgomery, there was a bounty on his head. That's a clear picture of him there. So anyway, let me say this. I don't mean to prolong. They had the meeting in a place other than where they would normally have the meeting because of traitors within the community.
Right.
Feel the beans that he was there. They a prominent leader like him would usually stay at the Grand Hotel, which was Black owned, because we couldn't stay at Holiday Inn or Howard Johnson in those days, or they would stay at the Peyton House, which was a Black mansion on Davis Avenue. I'm gonna cut to the chase. They had the meeting in Pritchard in a place no one would think was the Eastern Star Hall, and those that attended.
Amen.
Finally, the dinner was prepared by my aunties. This is my great auntie. This is my grandfather's sister, Aunt Alice. Her nieces, my father's sisters, prepared the meal, and my uncles all provided security. And if you weren't in the neighborhood, you could come in the neighborhood. When we were talking about King, I remember that there was a bounty on his life.
Right. Yeah. And that's important because like you mentioned, the people who would snitch. There were also the people who knew that there were people who would snitch, who didn't like it at all. Because like you said, that there were people, so, there's this image of this period where either you were for or you were against, you were either violent or nonviolent. And it's that binary that confuses, I think, a lot of young people who take unnecessary sides instead of really delving into the complexity of what the situation was, both internal to the Black community, but also internal to the nation.
I think that people who were in the movement early on, bravest folk on the planet, Jimmy Lee Jackson out of Marion, Alabama, who died. The march from Selma to Montgomery was about the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson initially. Jimmy Lee Jackson, Reverend James Orange had started a movement in Marion, Alabama, 40 miles from Selma. And the sheriffs came and broke up the demonstration and started beating on Jimmy Lee's mother. Jimmy Lee defended his mother and was shot and survived the shooting. He was killed at a hospital. But the march was about taking the effigy, is that the word, of his body from Selma to Montgomery. You had to be brave to even think in terms of violence. When it's like brave enough to go into a pit of vipers, knowing that you could get bit. And that's how it was in the South. When I was in the 7th grade, we went to Huntsville, Alabama. I hope I'm not taking over. This is just fodder. We went to Huntsville, Alabama for a science project, and we had to have a special letter from the Board of Education. This was in 1962. We were stopped 4 times because they thought we were freedom riders. You can't be brave to be a freedom rider. And I think young people today, because the cameras are showing and they be throwing their fingers in the police face and talking about them and yelling and screaming, that is not the case back in Birmingham, Alabama, where they sick dogs on you.
Yeah, I know you're feeling it, Uncle Lionel. I'm gonna bring up Dr. Joe super quick because he had a hard stop at 6, and I just wanted him to say hi to you all. As I, and we'll, I guess we'll have to do it again. But Dr. Joe, you wanted to just come up and say hi real quick? He's the aviator. Dr. Joe is the aviator, and he has an awesome book, The 600 MOL. So I'll share all that with you all. But thank you. This is way powerful. Okay, Dr. Joe, I know you got to go, so I'm going to give you the floor.
Good evening. Hi. Quick, if you would. Just chatted. I just sent the message. I have 2 minutes, 120 seconds, and I'll turn into a pumpkin, so to speak. I'm Dr. Joe Pons, originally born and raised in a little place in Maryland called Baltimore. Some of you may have heard of that place. I grew up in the projects, Gilmore Projects, west side of Baltimore, and might turn to a pumpkin before that. Okay, so very quickly, yes, I was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and during the era in which I came along, well, civil rights was the main issue. Okay, Dr. King and all those things that you've heard. So I kind of echo those things and did all those things. But I just want to say this, that we were trained by some very fantastic teachers, went to segregated schools. And the bottom line was that they trained us that average is an enemy. And we would never want to consider ourselves as average because anybody can be average. And if we were going to succeed in the world at large, then we must be better than basically anybody else. So we had to be the best version of ourselves. So we trained hard, we studied hard, we prepared ourselves, they prepared us. And the bottom line was that in our preparation, the lessons that we learned, we were to pass on to the next generation. They were passed on what they learned and certain things that we had to watch out for, that kind of thing. And at the same time, the lessons that we learned, we had to pass on. We were mandated, if you would, to pass these things on to the next generation. So when I came along in school, a lot of racism throughout society. And this is what we were trained to deal with. I didn't get all the information that I needed because when I went to the South and I was stationed in the South, there were a lot of things that I did not learn. I wasn't aware of. I was very naive and I could have been killed a lot of times. And I can tell you that if it wasn't for the grace and mercy of God, I wouldn't be here today. The one thing that we were taught was that we had to watch ourselves, keep quiet, be in your place, because white folk expected you to have a place. They considered you to remain in that place, and you weren't to speak up and speak out. Well, unfortunately, growing up in the hood, if you would, I didn't learn that lesson. And if you do me wrong, I'm going to do you wrong. That's all it was to it. And if I see wrong, I see injustice, I'm going to speak up and speak out. And it didn't matter whether I was in the North or in the South. It just didn't matter. And so for that reason, I spoke up, I spoke out, and I was ostracized. I was, put down, probably lost a military career over it, but nevertheless, I spoke up and spoke out. And as a result of that, there were some instances, some situations that I was in wherein I was actually the first Black ever. And not that I had that in my mind. What I had in my mind was I had to do the very best that I could in whatever situation I was in. Right. So ultimately, they had a chess tournament in the city of Savannah, Georgia. They allowed me to go in to participate, even though I wasn't a citizen. Nevertheless, I was in the military. And so they waived that requirement. I entered the chess tournament and I won. So I was the first ever chess champion in Savannah, Georgia. First ever, Black or white, first ever. And went on from there. I was the first Black, what we call springboard diving, 1 and 3 meter diving champion in the Army. Also, the first Black judo champion in the Navy and Coast Guard combined. As a matter of fact, that year I was in the top 15 in the country. And I was also the very first Coast Guard direct commission aviator. In other words, they hired me off the street. First time they ever done that. And I was the first Black in Coast Guard history to have received a direct commission as an aviator in the Coast Guard. So I'm going to pause right there. What questions do you have? None? Well, I thank you so much. And I want to thank Monda for considering me as a treasure. Indeed, I can't spell treasure, let alone anything about it. Treasure to me was if I had 3 meals a day, I consider that a great treasure because my family was on welfare. There were 4 of us siblings. We all slept in the same room, same bed, and we had a tough time. But nevertheless, the Lord blessed us and we got through all of that. So perhaps at another time, I may be able to share a few more things with you. Maybe between now and then, you'll think of some questions that you'll have that you might want to have answered. I'd be more than happy to do so. But in the meantime, again, thank you so much. I have enjoyed all the speakers and being a part of this. And I look forward to our paths crossing again someday.
Thank you. Yeah, can you just expound kind of quickly on your memory program, which I think all of us need to take?
Yes, I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of Remember Vets, which is a nonprofit. And what we do basically is to train individuals, especially vets and first responders. So we're talking about law enforcement, EMTs, doctors, nurses, fire rescue, and so forth. To improve their memories and their quality of life, especially those who have a measure of PTSD. We know that there are 20-some veterans that commit suicide on a daily basis. daily basis. We also know that that the number one cause of death among law enforcement personnel is suicide. There are more individuals who are in law enforcement that take their lives than those that are killed in the line of duty. And so we have programs that we have developed to help these individuals to improve their memories. And so as a matter of fact, we're offering one to the general public next Saturday, which will be last Saturday this month, 9 to 12. It's a mini conference, if you would, 3 hours. And so we are doing this in honor of the memory of those who commit suicide. And so if you want to be a part of that, I think Monda has a link to that, or you can contact me directly, Dr. Joe, DRJOE, at Remember Vets, plural, remembervets.com. Monda?
Thank you, Dr. Joe. We appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Absolutely. God bless you. Take care. And as my son always tells me, Dad, don't have a great day. Make it a great day. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, what?
We're good.
Okay. All right. Okay. We pushing through. And we are going to finish up our treasures with the stories from our treasures with Miss Margaret. Let me bring this back up. And ding, ding, ding. Okay. Let's see. Oh, that was Dr. Pons. Okay. Hold on. All right, to talk about that in the end.
Let's remember.
Here we go. So in the interest of time, well, okay, I'm not good at Miss Margaret. Hold on. Let me pull up the trailer. Hang on one sec. Okay. All right, now let me share. Hang on. Share screen. Okay.
He had the audacity to ask, why couldn't I vote for him? What did I have to lose? Everything.
We the people have the power. Recently, someone looked at me and he said, hey, you lady from ISIS, get out of our country and leave us alone. I feel so bad now that I have to take my scarf off when I'm driving my car because I'm scared about my life.
We have to keep together, we have to keep talking, we have to keep fighting, we have to keep inspiring each other and reminding each other what's at stake.
Mr. Speaker, I will not be here or outside at the inauguration ceremony. The event I'm going to is the Women's March on Washington.
Thank God to the women for having invited and called us all together.
To me, it's like a very simple message. You're not alone.
Makes America great. I want to stand up for people who are in danger. And I want to use the incredible platform that I have to make someone else feel more comfortable in their own skin.
Oh, when I got to see my name in the ballot, that was the most exciting moment in my whole life.
And I look to you to be that other generation that will carry forth the march for freedom.
She made sure that her voice was heard. And I thought, if she can do this, then I can do this.
The single largest electoral force in the United States of America is women.
Good morning, resistors.
You gotta vote, you gotta educate yourself, you gotta get out there, you gotta fight for what you believe in.
Women all around, raise your fists! Now is the time we must resist!
There's an incredible amount of opportunity now for all of us to rise up and to really stand for something.
Let's rise up! Let's march on Washington! Our footsteps and our voices will be heard!
So, Miss Margaret.
Ready? The scenes you've just seen were from Resistorhood, a
He had the audacity to ask, why couldn't I vote for him?
Okay.
Okay, that was the scenes you saw were from Resistorhood, a documentary that started January 17th, 20, 20, when did Trump, 2017. Yeah, the day after Trump was elected. That was the first day of a tremendous movement that lasted, well, it's still ongoing. But I don't want to talk about that day. Monda asked me specifically about my participation from Selma to Montgomery, where I had joined the march on the last day of the Selma to Montgomery march. And I won't spend a lot of time on that, but I do want to go back a bit in history. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education was passed, integrating all kinds of, not just schools, but interstate travel, et cetera. In 1955, Emmett Till was murdered, which started the civil rights movement. We all know the history of all of the things and all of the events that occurred in the mid 1950s, throughout the 60s, to the death of Martin Luther King Jr. This month, in 2022, the Congress of the United States has just passed the Emmett Till anti-lynching law. That's amazing. It's taken over a century for that to happen. Just think about that. Over a century for an anti-lynching law to become a federal crime in the United States of America. Then I go back to 1954 again, Board of Education. The right to vote, 1965, Civil Rights Act of 1965. And what developed from that act is our present day world, where Black people are more and more being, well, thought of as human beings. I thought, until I saw the death of George Floyd, which brings me to another moment of present day history. Sitting in our United States Congress as I speak are two bills, the Voting Rights Bill and the George Floyd Policing Act bill. They have yet to be passed. What is it that we can do? What is it that we can do to make sure that voting, which is our power, is something that all of us should be so incensed about that we are willing to march once again, like we did January 17th, to demand full participation, all of us. And one other point that I don't know, I'm concerned about what I see in happening, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then I think we are fighting for their democracy, and we should be. But why aren't we fighting for our democracy? What is it about us that makes us sit back and let our democracy crumble? We see it before our very eyes. We look at it every day. I have yet to understand what it is about the American voter who believe that we can just sit still and do nothing and everything will take care of itself. It won't take care of itself. We are the people who have to make democracy work if it's going to work at all. I know that this, in one sense, is not Selma to Montgomery, but in the truest sense of the word, it is indeed another Selma to Montgomery. As we march for voting rights then, we need to march for voting rights today. And I'm going to end with that because there's nothing else I can say about the state of the union as I sit here today. Voting, voting, voting. We need to do it. if we're going to maintain a representative democracy.
Thank you, Sir Margaret. Veronica, I'm glad to see that you're speaking up. You have a question for Miss Margaret?
Yes, I just really appreciate everything that Miss Margaret had to share. All of her points were on point today, and made me think about why I'm joining this call. Miss Margaret mentioned that voting is our power. I just want everybody to know that Marilyn Pierre is running for Montgomery County Circuit Judge. She is Haitian American, and she is a woman. Women must be represented, and she is a woman of color who supports equal rights, equal justice. So I just wanted to put that out there. And Monda, I was invited here today by Georgia Gosling. We both support Maryland. So after this call, can you please share your email address so that we can connect you with Maryland?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Veronica. I have here, you all, I wanted to share with you before Miss Margaret started a quote that she sent me in a text last year sometime. And I just thought how salient it was then and how relevant it is now. And she says that to date, and to date, and after 4+ centuries, I needed my glasses when I take this, of life in what is now the US, no scientific breakthrough has manufactured an anti-racist vaccine, and no religious faith has erased the myth of white superiority with its practices, beliefs, and with sermons. Not a single doctor has knowledge of how to remove hatred from a diseased human heart. Laws have been ineffective. So
That's a very powerful statement.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And it's so true, and it has always been true. And when you look back at our lives, black and white in America, because let's face it, we share the same history. We're not disconnected in terms of history. We are not a black race and a white race. You know what we are? We are a human race. There is only one race, the human race. And if we don't get this thing together, we're going to all fall apart, as we saw on January 6, 2021, with literally people climbing the walls not as if they were brutes and animals, because they were. And we permitted that to happen. And we're still permitting it to happen as one race, not just black and white, but human beings did that. And other human beings stood back and let it happen without a demonstration that was so impactful that things could have changed. We could have changed that, but we didn't. We seem to be so quiet. And I don't mean violent. You don't have to be violent to make changes. Dr. Martin Luther King saw to that, and a lot of his followers saw to that. You don't have to be violent to make change. You know what you have to do? In 2022, the midterms, and in 2024, you need to take that power you have with a vote and go to the polls and vote. You don't just wait once in a while to vote. You vote every single time. We all should know now how important a Secretary of State is to an individual state, or an Attorney General. Why not use that knowledge that you have and do something good with it? We know that what we're living through is pure hell. Think of all the states that already have laws in effect that will deny a lot of people the vote. And for why? Because they want power. We have power too. Let's use it. Let's go to the polls and vote. One other point. Wanda knows that and my role as as a person is an activist. I need to encourage people to get out there and stand up for their rights. You hear journalists talking about, well, the Democrats will lose in the midterms and they're going to lose in 2024, but they don't follow up. Of course, we will lose if we don't vote.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do to make the correction is the Democrats could lose in 2022 at midterms and 2024 if they sit back and don't vote. Let's make the other things. Let's go out and vote. Don't make it a surety that we're going to lose. Don't have people sitting back thinking, they've already told me that we're going to lose. Why should I vote? So I'm encouraging all of you to get out and talk with your neighbors. Let them know that democracy is under attack. Don't think it can't happen. It can happen here just like it has happened to all other places throughout the world. It can happen in the United States. This time, maybe more white people will understand the trauma of what Black people are going through for as long as there have been Blacks in the United States of America. Please be an activist. It's so simple. An activist is somebody who goes to the polls with a knowledge of what's happening in our world, in our cities, and in our states, and you do something about it. And it's so simple. You simply vote, and you vote every time in city governments and state governments and the federal governments. And if all of us can do that and encourage one more person who has never voted or think it's a waste of time to vote, or who think their votes don't matter, if we can encourage just one more person, each of us and our friends, we will win in 2022 and again in 2024. We can do this.
I have a question. And the question is, you said I just drove the Mont Aubrey family from Brunswick to Selma. They were invited to participate in the bridge crossing. I crossed that bridge about 15 times in my lifetime. When in 1965, when the bridge crossing, I was 15 and my mother wouldn't let me at all do that. I understand that you said you walked in the first crossing.
No,
Yeah.
no, the last day of the march. The last day of the Selma to Montgomery march.
The first time.
The Thursday.
Yeah, that's the question. You know, you reenact the march now, there's no fear. So the question is, you had to be brave to be out there. They had already killed the woman from Detroit, and I think there were three black men that they had killed in Alabama during that time. Was it one white woman or something?
Viola Liuzzo was the white woman who was killed at the end of that march, right?
So how did that feel to put yourself in a situation where you were putting your life on the line? Because there's a difference in demonstrating now and demonstrating then. So
there comes a point. Well, I'm a genealogist and I'm a historian and I've taught history, and I'm just a person who loves to read. I know a lot about Black history. I've always known about Black history, and I've always known my place in Black history as a proud Black person from the age of 8. So when I decided to make that journey, it wasn't simply because of Bloody Sunday. It was because of an accumulation of experiences that have developed. You know how when you say that's what do they call the needle in the haystack? There is some saying that my mother would know immediately, but that was the it was so vicious and so violent, seeing something on actual TV and living also through years prior to that time of being a child of the South, growing up in Jim Crow, Memphis, Tennessee. There's a history that comes with that. And at some point, you're so fed up, you'll say, well, I'm ready to die. in order to effect the change that will make a difference in the world in which we live, not just the United States, but hopefully in the world in which we live. So it was easy to say, yes, I'm going. But then it wasn't as difficult as walking down the street these days as a Black man being shot for no reason at all. To me, I don't see a difference. These are people who put themselves on the line every single day simply because they walk out of their doors in a black face or a brown face, and you don't know if they're coming home again. So all of these things to me are one of a kind, not just the march from Selma to Montgomery, because people have been marching for as long as there have been people in the world. Black people have been marching, even enslaved. In fact, Black people are the original Black Lives Matter people. Black women are the original Me Too. Because you know what happened during slavery. So at a certain time, they had to add a separate category, mulatto, to account for all of the injustices done to a Black woman's body. So these things are not just one thing. It's an accumulation of things that runs through 4 centuries plus of life in the United States of America. So it was easy to make that choice. Well, yes, I'm going to participate. Because if I don't, and nobody else does, who will?
I'm reading.
All of us can do that.
18 now. You have 3 books that I've read: Cast, The Warmth of Other Suns, and I see 1619.
These are just some that I've just finished because we're in a book. But you know what?
So cute.
Do this one.
What is it?
How the Word is Passed. That is the most amazing book. It's just by Clint Smith. Now, Monda has been in my library, so she knows these are just.
How the Word, hold it up again.
It's called How the Word is Passed.
Yeah, that popped up in my Amazon.
3 of the books you have there, 1619, I'm on that now.
Okay.
The Sons, Isabel
Wilkerson.
Crazy on that book.
There is one part in that book toward the end, the young man from Florida, I'm missing his name, who's one of the 3 immigrants that moved from the South to the North. Yeah. He made a powerful statement. I can't quote it verbatim, but it's this. He stated that he'd been walking around in a cage because he was Black. People couldn't see him.
Yeah.
After the George Floyd murder, I thought about that. A lot of people removed that cage and saw him as a Black man for the first time, which is what a lot of white people did when they actually viewed the crushing of Floyd's life out of him. So it was so traumatic. People took it so internally. And for the first time in my life, I saw more white people advancing the cause for Black Lives Matter than all of the years of my life. That was a positive. So, but yeah, there are a lot of good books out there. That's why the critical race theory, they don't want you to read that. They don't want you to know our history because it is damning. It's not damning on the people necessarily now. It's not to get revenge. It's just to know what has happened so you can know how to undo some of that. House Bill 40 is up now. The reparations former commission. People are fighting like hell to make sure that doesn't happen. So just be aware of who you are, white people and Black people. All of us need to know our shared history because that's what it is. And the more you know, the better you're able to make the changes to correct the injustices. So.
Amen. I'm kind of feeling like we're going to need a treasure on treasure episode. That is fantastic and it's true. Yes, Mama Badajo.
Ms. Morrison, thank you very much for those comments on those texts, the two books in particular. But I really want to give a shout out to the 1619 Project and recommend that everybody read it, because the documents in there are extraordinary and it explains a lot about where we are today. And you're right, that's why they don't want us to read it. The other piece to go with that, and you can find it on Amazon, is a text on the voyages of Columbus, the original documents. And there's one narrative in there where Columbus is writing a letter back to his sponsors in Spain. And he's just landed in what becomes Santo Domingo. And he meets the Taino occupants of the island. And because they come out to greet them and all of that, he writes that they're very warm people, they're very hospitable, they're very beautiful people, so on and so forth. And when he takes out a sword, that they've never seen a sword before, and one of the men grabs the sword by the end and cuts his hand. And what I found absolutely painful and inhumane is that the response is that they don't know what a sword is, they don't have weapons, so 50 armed men could come and take over the whole place. And it just makes my stomach turn to think that this is the worldview of people who are going into somebody else's territory, that instead of thanking them for feeding you and keeping you alive, you're already starting to devise ways to destroy them and take what they have. And I think that is a point of departure that we often overlook, because we get the milquetoast version, of Columbus's voyage. Columbus never got to the United States, by the way. But we get that image of an explorer trying to prove the world was round and not flat. That's all trash, because they knew by then the world was round and that it was not flat. But the point here is that we have to read and we have to understand these texts, like you said, to understand the mindset that we're dealing with. And I think that that's important. You have to understand that mindset, because if not, we keep having the same discussions over and over and over and over again.
I say one thing, if you get into genealogy,
yes,
ancestry, like I'm a researcher and I've researched my family. What's interesting is that if you know where your people are from when they were born, and you listen to these books, you can say, oh, my grandmother was 2 years old when that happened.
Right.
Well, because my great grandmother was born in 1861. And the 1619 make references to things that Lincoln said in 1862, 1863. Right. And you can connect all of that. It's the books that you have there are amazing books, and the one that you just mentioned was Columbus Letters. What's the name of it?
It's called Christopher Columbus and the Enterprise of the Indies.
Got it. And the book that you just showed us is How the World Was Made.
How the Word is Passed.
How the Word is Passed. Thank you.
It's in the chat. I think Rhonda put it in the chat. And I know they pulled out another. There we go.
That's because I'm teaching this book right now.
Well, you got to talk about that, Mama Badger. You tell me you were teaching. We got to talk offline.
Yeah, no, it's a seminar. It's not a full class. It's a seminar.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely.
This is amazing. This
What you
is
say,
this is
Alana?
absolutely amazing. They talk about enslaving the Indians and how they did that, and of course the poor whites in Europe. It's an excellent piece of historical documentation that gives us some real insight into the complexity of trying to manage and deal with this situation and make the necessary changes.
Well, Rhonda, we need to do this again. This could be a monthly.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a caucus. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I do have a question though. With you all, what are your feelings about rapid fire, passing the torch, and striking a match for the interest of younger people to realize how serious everything is?
Well, I'm on fire all the time about making sure the next generation gets it. I don't think that we have the tightness that we used to have in the community where that was more possible than it is now. There are too many external influences that move them off the mark because they're, with the exception of the people who are dealing with entrepreneurship, for example, the people who are doing the research and publishing the books, the people who are trying to build in different areas of the society, both nationally and internationally, I think are taking up that mantle in their own way. And that's what we want. We want them to do that. But I think that there are too many ways out. There are too many easy roads to, and I don't want to disparage anybody because people sometimes have to do what they have to do, but there are too many escape hatches that did not necessarily exist certainly in my generation, where you confronted it every day and you had to deal with the reality of what it was. I mean, aside from George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the things that we see, we don't see the other parts of it. It's not quite as obvious as it was at that point. It's gotten much more subtle. And we have to get young people to engage a little bit differently. They have to get vested in it because their lives depend on it. As Ms. Morrison said, what do I have to lose? Everything. This is true. We can easily lose everything. And we can see the action and inaction in DC and in certain other places as an example of that. You just have to pay attention.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sometimes, for lack of a better way of putting it, you can get a little down. And then I listen to you all. And I'm good. I'm so good. One other thing. My question for Ms. Gosley is a question for everyone. Do you sometimes get frustrated by young people who seem to take for granted what's been put in place for them by people like yourselves? And one quick example, I'm a little bit younger than you. I'm 59. And when I started in the film industry, we would get one movie a year, maybe in New York, that Black folks could work on. Of course, there's always going to be exceptions, a DP here or there. I could name names. assistant camera person here, there, Leroy Patton, Jesse Maple. But for the most part, as a large group, oh, the Wiz is coming to town. Are we gonna work? Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy are doing a thing called Harlem. Oh, wait a minute, they're shooting it on the back lot. We're not gonna work. And now the kids, they go to school and they graduate and they get an internship and they get a job. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen?
What I think is that they need to understand the historical route that many people have traveled to provide them with those opportunities. I think there's nothing wrong with taking the opportunities. I think the only thing that concerns me is, as a young person said to me one day, you can't slap them, but I felt like it. Okay, boomer. I thought I was going to lose my mind.
Oh my.
Because this okay boomer was part of the reason that you are where you are, because it just didn't have to be that way. Because I didn't eat, not only did I not have a silver spoon in my mouth, I didn't have a silver spoon in my house. So that, you know, where this particular young person is not by accident. And it's not because he's young and good looking either. You know what I mean? So they really need to have a better understanding and respect. I mean, they've been trained out of respecting their elders, and that was the cornerstone of the Black community.
Facts.
You know, that was the cornerstone.
You can pick yourself on mute, Uncle Lionel.
I think the elders in our were the basis by which we learned and earned the things that we were afforded.
Right.
I think that this new generation, in some respects, they're doing some things that we couldn't even imagine doing.
Right.
Mom was doing. I can't think of any possible way, not just because of technology, but we were somewhat in the lane that we could work out of. Your guys, women in particular, and men, are doing things that were unimaginable.
Right.
Now, what sometimes happens is that we sometimes want to group all young people who are doing some dumb stuff into one category. It's like the tattoo people. I'm not saying anything about people with tattoos, but a girl with a tattoo on the side of her face, I just can't see that. But we put all of them in the same bag, the same way that white people put all of us in the same bag. This new generation is our future, and I think that they're doing some magnificent things. And I'm proud of their efforts and their great accomplishments. The woman who wrote The Warmth of Other Suns, wrote that book and cast, and the sisters that did the research on 1619.
That's extraordinary.
Mind you, I said sisters. I'm not saying brothers are not doing anything, but if you look at the civil rights movement, I live in Atlanta. I am where SCLC was based. Never in the history of the civil rights movement have women been recognized for their great accomplishments. SCLC used to say, never, in terms of leadership, never a woman and never another king. They didn't want any king's children running the organization. But if you think about the birth, if you look at the birth of the civil rights movement, think of Mamie out of Chicago, whose son was Emmett Till, Rosa that same year, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Fannie And the Black Lives Movement sisters, the sisters came up with that. Hey, I think this new generation sometimes, and I guess it's the same thing when we were growing up. Our parents thought that we were totally out of our minds. I'll shut up.
No.
Oh yeah, Bree.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Oh, so yeah.
Thank you. My doorbell rang. I had no idea who, but this is what my gift was.
Oh my.
Mama
That's
Batty,
beautiful.
yours will be there tomorrow. And
Oh, thank you.
When we talk about giving you your flowers while you're alive,
yes.
While you're here. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night to everyone. I enjoyed it. My information, get it from Manda. Anyone can call me, but in 5 minutes, I have a family prayer. We've been doing family prayer for 2 years straight.
God bless.
Not miss many Sundays. So I love all of
All
you.
right, Uncle Lionel, love you.
Love you too.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I figured we'd be 2 hours. I didn't think we'd be 3. To my childhood friend Melissa, yeah, thank you. It was, and I just look. I had goosebumps most of the meeting because of our discussion, because truth when you hear it, and to see it, to see all the treasures come together and compare. I mean, there's so many synergies between you all, and the stories. Like I've spoken with you, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, Miss Margaret went to the last day of the march from Selma to Montgomery. She said the same thing about the speakers. Like, I don't really remember everyone who was there, but I just know the vibe. I know the impression that it left on my heart. So, Doc, if you're talking about after King was assassinated, it's just that, it's just, yes. I love you guys so much, and I appreciate you, Rhonda. Congratulations for being the only Asian in your school for those years and making it out strong, and we're even stronger. So for those of you champions who are still on the line with us, and then there were 17, that's still a pretty good number, because some of our chronicles we haven't had 17 people on them. So, I do appreciate you all being here. Hey, cousin Rachel, Prashad, this is family life. Anissa, I haven't had an opportunity to meet you or know who you are, but hello and welcome. Daoud, it's so good to see you, and my sincere condolences.
May I have, before you close, may I read one passage from Amanda Gorman's
Absolutely.
poetry? I think talking about women, and this young woman, I guess the youngest poet laureate ever.
Yeah.
And this is from this is entitled Faith and Fury. The book is called Call Us What We Carry. And toward the end of the book, it's amazing poems. That young woman has the insight as if she has lived forever, because she brings out in her words what people have felt for as long as there have been human beings on earth.
Gift.
What I'm reading today is just the last part of a poem.
Okay.
It has black print,
You
so it's going to.
You can see that point.
Yeah,
right. You can see that font. That's miraculous.
Right. It's on black and it's small. So I'm using a light. She says, "Together we. Let me start again. Together we envision a land that is liberated, not lawless. We create a future that is free, not flawless. Again and again, over and over, we will strike up every mountainside, magnanimous and modest. We will be protected and served by a force that is honored and honest, that is more than protest. It's a promise." And I thought the protest and the promise, and there's so much hope in that, so much hope in what she's bringing. And that's the kind of hope I take with me every day, even though sometimes I'm despondent. There is still that vision of hope. And invite you to buy her book too. I think you'll enjoy just browsing through it and reading.
Mm-hmm.
Call us what we carry.
Mm-hmm. You like that, huh, Sonny? I appreciate you guys. Okay. Anyone, any other comments before we adjourn for the evening?
Hey, Amanda, this is Bayo. How you doing?
Hi, Fabio.
Hey, I just want to thank you and all these wonderful, wonderful people. One of them, which I know obviously very intimately. But
which one is that?
that would be Dr. Badajoe.
I know.
For those that don't know. But towards the end of the conversation, I heard some comments and some discussion around young people kind of carrying the torch, and the connection that is there, I think probably needs to be strengthened and enhanced. But I think we do hear you. I don't think it's as pronounced as it should be. But I guess just me speaking as a young person on this call, I think we are trying to do those things in our many different ways. We do try to understand the challenges and know our history, but we are also facing new challenges, right? That so there needs to be a certain level of continuity there. But I just want to put that there, but really thank all of you wonderful people for providing us this future that we live in the present. So kudos to you all.
Thank you, Bio. We won't be hearing no okay boomer from Bio. you might backhand and slide across to another state.
Right. Well, I'll tell them myself. I'm about 40 something years old, and look, I even have issues with young kids. Just as when I grew up, anytime you encounter somebody that was even 6 months older than you had to give them that proper due and respect, and it is an issue. But I think there's a way back, obviously, and that's what we have to focus on, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Thank you for making me proud, son.
Always.
Yeah. Always.
Okay. So next month, I'll just send everyone a follow-up email, but we're going to be speaking with 703. Yeah, we're going to be speaking with Nigerian British filmmaker Claire Amyan Osigwe. She has a film that has been on the circuit for a couple of years called No Shade. We're going to be talking about colorism. So it's as if it's not enough to have other people hate you for the color of your skin. What is it like when you have your own people hate you for the color of your skin, and who have been indoctrinated through DNA and through parents and grandparents and great grandparents that tell their children how bad it is to be associated with darker skin, darker hued people. And this happens all over the world. So we're going to watch a movie. She's going to give me a link to her film. Again, it's called No Shade. I'm gonna stop the recording. Bye, everybody. Okay, so that